Welcome, Kyle, to the Realignment podcast. I'm so excited to have you here. We've been talking about this conversation for a while, and we've been working together a little bit in like a mentorship trade, which has felt really, really great. I hope it's felt as great for you as it has been for me. And so excited to have you on the podcast and for this conversation, which I'm sure we're going to go far, far out there. So for the people that are listening, put on your seatbelt because it's going to be a fun ride. And yeah, would love to have you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your story, and we'll jump right into it.
Right on. Well, thanks for having me on, Ava. Yeah, it's been an amazing exchange. I've really appreciated learning from you, and hopefully, little bits of what I've picked up along the way have been useful for you too. Yeah, so I just kind of love to just start with kind of how I even got here in my story. I think it's just so important to understand the context of the work that I do, and it's really also cool to connect with you because you have a very, very similar approach to how I see healing generally. And you have, a different set of tools as well. And you're a very awesome somatic practitioner and very well versed in detoxification generally too. So it's going to be fun. But yeah, so I got into this through my own health journey, like so many of us, right? I'm pretty sure you had your own very in-depth health journey too. Uh, but it started really when I was born. My mom dealt with a lot of health issues that they couldn't really put a finger on what it was. She was dealing with, they thought it was MS, and then they thought it was like psychiatric, and then they thought it was like POTS and all sorts of weird stuff. But then I was born and I always felt kind of off, not really fully embodied, kind of always anxious, kind of always spacey, right? And so, I was still able to kind of hit a relatively high achieving level. I was an athlete in high school, and uh, really at 18, though, all of a sudden, my entire body collapsed, right? It just really got to the point where I could not even have a normal conversation. I would forget the last sentence that was being spoken, or that very bizarre feeling where you don't even remember the names of good friends, right? I mean, just my brain was completely toast. Yeah. So, and of course, I had absolutely no energy either. And that's such a deep level of exhaustion that it's not something you can sleep off. It's the kind of thing where even the most basic tasks feel absolutely overwhelming to do, right?
Mm.
So I got really obsessed with health. I was actually studying to become a doctor back then. And I got my taste of modern medicine pretty quickly. I went through several doctors, and God bless them. They were important, I guess, for that chapter of my life. But I didn't find any solutions for like the chronic depth of pain I was experiencing. But several dozen symptoms, right? Not just that. It was like digestive and skin and joints and muscle pain, and just was absolutely awful. So I got obsessed. I spent a absolutely absurd amount of money going through dozens and dozens of practitioners. And I tried all the diets, right? Vegan and carnivore and one meal a day and paleo and starch-based diet and fast-based diet or fat-based diet and everything in between, so many supplements. And I kept running into these similar patterns, right? The main one really being that it felt like everything was scratching the surface. Everything would give me a little relief, but it wouldn't really last. It would work and then it would stop working. Or I just felt like I had to take dozens and dozens of supplements and be so rigid with my diet because I barely tolerated any foods, and so rigid with my sleep, so rigid with what I could actually engage in life, just to feel half okay. Not really. I was still suffering immensely. Um, and for me, my first taste of real health, right, or like what is possible, was I was taught a little bit about detoxification. I mean, this was many, many years ago, but I learned some of the basics of drainage, some basic binders, some charcoal and some bentonite clay, nothing too crazy, but still, that with liver herbs for the first time gave me a taste of, wow, I can actually sort of think, right? It didn't, and once I got a taste of that, and I realized there was actually hope and there was a higher state I could achieve, I got obsessed even more than I already was. So I launched into detox headfirst, and I ended up making a lot of really silly mistakes. I ended up doing parasite killing and chelation inappropriately and at the wrong time, and that made me significantly worse. Uh, so I ended up then having a whole process of then having to separate from that. I then found mineral balancing, which is another beautiful science that I incorporated and really helped me. So fast forward many, many years, many mentors along the way. I started to find this beautiful rhythm of doing things at the right time would keep taking me to a higher and higher level. And after a while, I realized I had never been healthy in my life. I had never
Mhm.
really tasted what it was like to even be myself and to express myself and to feel embodied and to feel calm and peaceful and safe in my body. I didn't even know like what safety was in my body. I always felt like everything was dangerous because I had no energy to meet the stressors of life. So yeah, it ended up happening naturally that people started asking me for advice, and I just started doing that. And I tried to do it for free for a while. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work out. People don't
Mhm.
really, they don't really, they need skin in the game. And so after a while, I just became a coach, and next thing you know, it was the thing I was doing full time. So here we are, many years later, talking to you.
Amazing. I think it's so eerie how similar our stories are. Like I tell my story in the exact same way, where it's like it started at birth and my mom and this and that, and then like obviously coming to all the mistakes that we had to make in detoxification along the way, including for me a near-death experience. And it sounds like for you it was like a very similar, like harsh realization that you can't just jump into, especially chelation, but also parasite cleansing, right? It's like one of the main things that I talk with my audience about as well. It is like, don't do the parasite cleanse when you first start detoxing because you will get hurt. And it sounds like that's been your experience as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
and then obviously also the mineral balancing piece, which we're also overlapping in. And I'm now, as of recent, incorporating into the business as well. So it's so
amazing.
nice to hear and to just like be accompanied by someone with like similar philosophies and that like understands a similar level of healing, which I think or I know, unfortunately, in this day and age is still quite rare in the practitioner space. So, yeah, I'm super excited to dive into some topics with you today. And I'd love to kind of just jump right in and talk a little bit about more of like the taboo topics that people don't really tend to talk about in the space of detoxification. And one of them being like the more yeah, like talking about the art of detoxification, we just talked about this a little bit before we jumped in. I would actually love to have you speak to this a little bit and we can have a conversation around just the art of detoxification because it truly is an art form in my experience in like even working with clients, right? When we ask practitioners have to be so highly attuned not to like what are their labs? What are their numbers? Like who is this individual when it comes to their intake form, but also like what are we feeling when we're meeting with them, like, are they actually making progress? Are there parts of their lives that are misaligned that maybe they need to clean up before actually, they're able to make progress? So I'd love to just have you jump in and tell me a bit about like, what is your understanding of like the art of detoxification?
Yeah, what a charged question. I think I could start by just saying what I see in the space today, especially in like more functional medicine and naturopathic medicine. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of brilliant practitioners in that space, but there's also a lot of treating tests and not
Mhm.
treating people, right? So there's also not enough empowerment in the space. There's a lot of I'm the practitioner, I know all the answers, right? And you have to then stay meeting with me every 3 to 6 months for the rest of your life. Otherwise, you're screwed. You're on your own, right?
Yeah.
I really think that the way forward is the complete opposite of that. I think the way forward is for people to gain a high degree of mastery and competency in self-healing, right? To really understand these tools so that they can make it part of their lifestyle, right? And they can protect their longevity long term and escape the hamster wheel of bouncing around practitioners for the rest of their life because that got old real quick, let's
Oh
just
yeah,
say, right? Yeah.
totally.
So, and I think the only way to do that is again to master the process of detoxification because I think it really is the most important thing people need to think about today. We live in the most toxic times in human history on all levels, physically, emotionally, spiritually. There's so much junk in people's inner space, both their biochemistry and their mental space. And so just the process of purification and keeping yourself clean, right, is just so critical. And it's something that is difficult to do by yourself, right? You need a mentor. You need someone to take you through the the thick of it, right? Especially if you're dealing with any kind of chronic illness and chronic symptoms, it's really hard to get through that yourself. But once you get to a really stable, centered place, then you can fly, right? Then you can take it and run with it. So I think a lot of this is about empowering people on how to stay, healthy and high functioning. And really that is the art form, right? A lot of people talk about the science of detox and this study and that supplement and this protocol. But ultimately the art is about connecting to your body in a really deep way, understanding how to communicate with it and dance with it, right? And also how to dance with how much can you push when you are trying to clean. So, for example, this kind of brings us into the whole topic of healing reactions and detox reactions. That's
Mhm.
a big grievance I have with the healing space right now. There's a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of just take this, push through it, and you'll be fine after a few months. And you
For
know,
sure.
yeah, most of the time that's not the move. And that was the biggest mistake I made, right? I had to literally deprogram that. Oh, I just need to push through, put through, because I'm a very willful person, and
Yeah.
it got me into some pretty sticky situations. I remember actually one of the worst detox reactions I ever had when I was doing this by myself was I took a bunch of nascent iodine, like way too much.
Oh
And
gosh.
oh my God, I literally was in a different dimension. I was driving and I had to pull over and I'm like, I can't drive. I'm losing my mind. I'm gonna have to get admitted or something. Luckily I had to, I took a bunch of binders, colon cleanse, somehow got myself to a stable place after a few weeks. But it's serious business, right?
Mhm.
And so the art form is how do you get to a stable place, right? And that centered place, and then how do you move from there, right? And
Mhm.
not just that, but then how can you push that envelope of discomfort just a little bit of change? Because change is uncomfortable in any area, whether it's business or relationships or in detoxification. How do you push that envelope just a bit, but not to the point where things become unstable? Because when
Right.
things become unstable, then your life becomes about healing, right? Instead of healing being to help you live your life.
Mm.
So, yeah, I mean, it kind of could go on and on about it, but it's a really, it's a really beautiful thing to look at it that way. It makes more space for a kind of graceful intuitiveness instead of a rigid scientific approach. Science is beautiful, it's amazing, but it's also by its very nature limited, right? It has no way to properly encapsulate reality, which is so expansive. There's so much we don't know about the body, but I think it's great to have balance of both, right? And intuitiveness
Totally.
with your own body and communication, yet still being grounded in what's the latest research.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautifully said. And I think it's like one of the first things that I tend to teach my clients, which is really the understanding of like how the nervous system is like the biggest determining factor in whether or not you're going to get healthy, right? And so if we are pushing our nervous system beyond our what's called like our window of tolerance, which you talk about a lot in like, emotional release, somatic work, is that we have this window of tolerance. And once that window of tolerance is that the boundary is crossed, you actually are re-traumatizing the system. But the same goes for the physical body, right? Like if your body and your nervous system are basically seeing this like, oh, I'm taking these supplements. However, right, it's a threat. And now I'm responding to it with this massive threat response. And I'm turning on the what's called the cell danger response. I'm putting the entire system on lockdown, right? Like you're actually halting detoxification. So I like to say that when we're having these detox reactions, rather than pushing through, it's actually like it's not a sign of detoxification, it's a sign of inefficient detoxification. It means that there's something that's not actually going right in the body. So all the alarm bells are going off and you're having like a massive flare up. And so I like the thing that I do most with my clients is like focusing on like the longevity piece of this. Like this is a lifestyle that you're wanting to adopt given the fact that we're in such a toxic world, right? We're always going to be trying to like fight with what we're bombarded with, whether it's negativity, whether it is like actual physical toxins or like whatever they end up putting in the sky and in our food systems, right? So we have to see this not as this like thing, which I used to think where it's like, oh, the faster I detox, the quicker I'll get healthy, or like the more parasites I'll get out of my body right now, the faster I'll feel better. And it's quite the opposite. And I think there's such an art form to what you said as well, of like really getting into this deeply feminine space with the body. It really is, right? Like detoxification is such like a masculine thing that we tend to do, or at least like the way that it's portrayed on Instagram and in the media. It's like this, like, take this at this time and do that every single day until all the toxins are gone. And it completely eradicates like the feminine nature of like actually the body's a rhythm, which I think is so beautiful that when we can get to a space in which, for example, I know like not everyone's a fan of muscle testing. I only bring it in with clients that I know they're actually able to really deeply tune into their bodies, which, most people and they're having like a lot of toxicity or parasites, it's a thing that's really hard to actually bring in. However, there is an art form even to working with, your own intuition and feeling like, is this supplement aligned for me in this moment? Or do I actually take a day off today? Because my body is like, when I'm interacting with the supplement, I'm looking at it, I'm feeling at it. There's something inside of me that says, "Ooh, this doesn't feel right in this moment." Every single time that I've pushed past that feeling, I've gotten some sort of detox reaction. I started feeling worse. I got immense brain fog or, anxiety or whatever it is because my body already told me, "Hey, I'm at my capacity today. I want to take a day off." And I think the art form is really in finding that space in which we're not reliant on supplements, but we're actually able to listen to what the body needs. And I think, with how you and I both work and actually educating our clients rather than saying, "Hey, here's your detox protocol, take this every single day and then come back to me and tell me how you feel," which is how unfortunately these days that's how most practitioners work. And I think this is one of the main reasons I saw the need to actually have a course that gives people every step of like every breakdown of every single step so that they actually can become their own healer and understand, oh wow, like my body is craving vitamin C, which is something that like how else would they know that, or like, oh, my body is being pulled more towards these kind of foods, and then maybe it changes as your cycle changes or as your oxidation rate changes, and for you to actually be able to be in tune with your body. I think it's an art form that I really hope that more practitioners will bring in. And I do think that we're shifting from this kind of like white coat, like pedestalizing people with degrees into a society that actually trusts people that have gone through that journey themselves, because the embodiment piece is so important. Like the amount of times that I've worked with practitioners that I'm trying to explain to what it feels like when I'm having a panic attack and they're like, I don't know what that what that's like. And
Yeah.
to actually know, like, obviously I don't know too much of your journey and like the extension of like the misery that you've gone through, which I'm sure was also
Pretty
quite
brutal also,
pretty
yeah.
brutal. Yeah, so it's like the level of empathy is just so much greater when you can actually, when okay, this is what happens when we take too much of that or when, you know, it doesn't fully feel good, and to actually be able to help your clients in a way through experience, um, I hope is the future of medicine.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's beautiful in many ways because, we have some of the worst issues with chronic illness, but at the same time, more people than ever have escaped that and entered a space of radiant health, which is really not even the norm. Radiant health is not the norm today.
Oh yeah.
The norm is low grade fatigue, low grade anxiety, low grade depression, low grade apathy, low grade just all of that, low grade inflammation. And this style of work is something that can take you far beyond that, right? And to help you explore, like, what does it even mean to be human? Um, but yeah, I mean, beautifully said, all the things that you said. I really think it's so interesting how important the embodiment piece is, and it shows up in so many different areas, like spirituality, a lot of new age spirituality is really an escapism type of thing.
Totally.
It's like, oh, I need to go and transcend to the 5D like yesterday because I hate everything on this planet. And it's like, no, like I think the real spiritual work is feeling so, so deeply that you are present and can really act from a soulful, spirit guided space, right? And that is tough because there is so much
Oh yeah.
pain and suffering that is often in the body, but you have to go through that to find this baseline of joy and of bliss and of peace of mind, right?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean, oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. So it's yeah, I mean, I'm just so insanely like passionate about having people really understand that this is something that can impact every area of life, right?
Mhm.
This work of detoxification is not just a let me heal my symptoms. let me, let me deal with my brain fog or my anxiety or my panic attacks or whatever.
Mhm.
It is really a process of transformation on all levels. It's like once you open Pandora's box, especially once you
Oh
start
yeah.
tasting it, it's like you just want to go all the way. And that's what's so beautiful about it. There's just such a deep interconnection between our bodies and our minds, and
Mhm.
cleaning out the physical toxins just opens up the gate for work on deeper levels
Mhm.
too. So, yeah, it's spiritual work in many ways.
Yeah, I'd actually love to go a bit deeper into that because I feel like for both you and I, that's really the foundation of our work. It's kind of like the detox and the mineral balancing is like the facade of like the deep spiritual work that actually needs to be done at the same time, or more so like even automatically gets to be done, right? And like one thing that I think people don't understand is like whatever blocks that we face in life, they are a direct mirror of the state of our internal being. And the internal being, yes, we could say the physical body, but more so, I like to say the physical body is also a direct reflection of that internal state. So if there is, right, like a lot of repressed anger or a lot of unresolved whether we want to bring in like past life issues or karmic imprints that are manifesting through our physical body, that also will put out a vibration that actually will create more of these, whatever we call like limitations in real life. And I have experienced this so deeply, and I'm sure you have so many of these stories yourself. When you actually start to work with releasing these physical blocks, I very, very vividly remember the first time I did a mucoid plaque cleanse and I released like 4 pounds of mucoid plaque. Like I was like one of those people that releases a fuck ton, or you're like, how did this just come out of me? Like, how did I just lose 4 pounds out of like, I was already really skinny?
Oh yeah.
And to feel that in those moments, like all of these limiting beliefs around money and scarcity and like being a victim, like at the same time, I like got such a clear download of like, this is what you're releasing right now. And I kid you not, that week after the cleanse is when my entire coaching business started. It was like this idea came through. I started it. I immediately started making money. Obviously, nowhere close to where it is now, but it was like this massive block was being released from my body and therefore from my life. And it kind of got me on this like, this like rabbit hole of understanding even what metals do and their consciousness when we carry them in our bodies, right? And I was thinking about this the other day, or I was sharing this on a coaching call, and it's so hard to determine, right? Like, was it the chicken or the egg with like, if I am in a state of depression and now I'm being called to these habits that are actually bringing more metals into my body, such as smoking or smoking weed, right? Was it the depression that actually pulled that similar state of vibration of the metals towards me? Or was it the metals inside of me that actually created more of that depression that then create, right? It's like this vicious cycle where you don't really know where it starts, but what we do know is that with these tools, we can end these cycles. And the way in which I really get fascinated about all of this is like obviously bringing in mineral balancing elements and retracing and understanding how when we're in utero we get passed down, these mineral patterns, these metals and other toxicities. And I've had memory like on mineral balancing protocol of my mom's sexual abuse, like fully viscerally experiencing her sexual abuse, having memory about it, and actually being able to tap into generational trauma that I've never been able to tap into or process until I started releasing this toxicity from my body. And gosh, I mean, it's such a deep rabbit hole to go into, but I think it's like the
Yeah.
foundation of everything.
Yeah. I mean, that's so powerful. I mean, yeah, it's kind of common in our space. That's what's funny about it too. It's just not like an unusual thing to see like transformation in the external world from cleansing the internal space. It really is like I guess you could say karmas or patterns kind of get lodged in the body and the toxins just get plastered on top of that. And sometimes a person can be so toxic that you literally cannot get to the seed, right? It can be so difficult to
Oh
get
yeah.
to the actual like root emotion behind like why you keep repeating certain experiences and behaviors in life until you detoxify. And on a biochemical level, okay, you have higher awareness, right? Your brain is working better. You see things more clearly. You have an instant processing of things that happened, and you can now make a change. It's like you regained your neuroplasticity, you regained your free will in some ways just by
Mhm.
eliminating what was keeping this keeping this spinning, right? Yeah, I mean, my God, I have several stories with mineral balancing specifically too, because it's such a, it's very well scientifically grounded, right? I mean, based on decades of research,
Yeah.
but like over and over, practitioners see experiences that just baffle the mind. I had this experience where I had this opportunity essentially to move to California, and I knew no one, but I was doing it essentially for love. And um, it was one of the most scary things I'd ever done in my life, right? As I had no security, I had no real job back then. I was just gonna kind of send it with little money I had. And I was doing hair testing still at the time. I was still like kind of undergoing that process. And after I did that move and I overcame this massive fear, I had for two retests straight off the charts level of copper,
No
right?
way.
Just literally so high. I mean, it was like 3x the reference range. And copper, for anyone who doesn't know, is very closely associated with the neurotransmitters around fear, right? The ones that are
Mhm.
stimulatory and keep us anxious and worried, right? A lot of the norepinephrine and adrenaline
Yeah.
often gets stimulated by copper. And so I went through this experience and had this massive dump that was insane and all these emotions coming up. And then on the other side of that was just like such a deep level of freedom, you
Mm.
know? And so it's so cool to get to map that out with a hair test. I mean, there's countless other stories I've seen of that.
Yeah.
Actually, a practitioner, well, not even a practitioner, a doctor that I really admire, Dr. Klinghart, that, we've had many conversations about him. He referenced this really interesting case, right? Where he had this lady who was this famous singer in the East, actually, on the East Coast, and she was dealing with health issues. And they tested her urine before, right, for heavy metals and just saw like her baseline.
Yeah.
And all they did with her was they did his style of healing traumas, right? Going back to an experience and fully resolving it and uncoupling the stress response from the autonomic nervous system.
Mm.
And it turns out she had been sexually abused at 12 years old. And after that was fully processed, they tested the urine again without taking any supplements or anything. And this lady had an increase of mercury in the urine that was 1,000 times over the reference range. So it wasn't a little bit, right?
Wow.
It was 1,000 times over. And so all this helps illustrate why it isn't enough to just work on the physical level, right? It
Exactly.
is powerful to have these tools that help us detoxify. But if you're working on both simultaneously, you have a winning combination, really. I
Mm.
mean, because there's this dance that happens where sometimes the blockage is on the physical level and you need to heal the gut and you need to open the liver.
Yeah.
And then other times it shifts and the blockage is actually on the mental emotional level, right? A person wants to stay the way they are. They want to keep being resentful. They want to keep being frustrated. They want to keep getting that emotional payoff from the way they are living, right? And until they overcome that, then they actually stop detoxifying, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, yeah, that's why I think the combination that you're doing with somatic work is a match made in heaven with this style of detox and mineral balancing.
Thank you. I mean, gosh, yeah, there's so many stories of clients that I have where, like I had this naturopath at one point who had done 70 liver flushes. He'd done like, multiple rounds of parasite cleanses, nothing like, he saw improvement in symptoms, but his main symptoms were still there. And all we did, I think we did like 4 or 5 sessions, a few in person of like emotional release. He had this like massive entity release, like crazy past life experience, was releasing all of this like anger towards his ex-girlfriend. And then he went through like a massive parasite elimination right after, like just tons of them. He wasn't on any supplements, no nothing. And then just like all of his symptoms started improving. And like there's so many
Wow.
stories of this where it's like, we can't really leave any of these parts out of the story. We can't like try to heal the body without the emotional. We also can't try to like fix our emotions and our resentments and like all of our traumas without addressing the physical body. Like they're so interconnected. And I think like, we're finally starting to realize how connected they really are. And I think for people, it can be so confusing as to where to start because it's this like, oh my gosh, like there's there's all these different practitioners. One is doing somatics, one's doing, plant medicine, one's doing like that, like we're being pulled in all these directions because the wellness industry is like popping off right now. And so yeah, I do find it really helpful to be able to kind of give people a space that like introduces all of those elements And still it's challenging, right? Because people, they want quick results. And the truth is that these kind of journeys, as you know, they take months, if not years of dedication to unravel these layers, which is, as you said, maybe we start with healing the gut and then you spent 2 months on just like working through old emotions and patterns that are coming up. And like you're so immobilized by those processes that you can't really do much on a physical level. And so there's like just these waves and these phases of healing that I think we really need to start honoring, that I don't think, just with the nature of Instagram and how we're all being promised these like quick results, like people are not realizing how much time and dedication and consistency it takes to actually make your body not only safe enough on a physical level in terms of actually like replenishing minerals and like, making it feel safe, like bringing the nervous system to a calm state, but also to a place in which like your emotions can actually start to unravel. And yeah, it's like it's a process that some of us are willing to go on. And if you are, like, I know that it's a brave fucking journey because it sucks at times, and it's also so rewarding to, as you mentioned, like experience just a quality of life that I never even thought was possible. And this includes, right, like we can't just think about, maybe many of the listeners are like, well, I feel like I'm physically in a pretty decent space. But when I'm talking about quality of life, and I think we can both speak to this, like we're talking about the relationships we're having, like the amount of money that we're making, the freedom that we feel from like fears in society that people are like really struggling with these days. And that really comes from like the art of like walking on the path of the willingness to like actually clear these blockages, whether they are physical through detoxification or like the more like mental, emotional, energetic pieces.
Yeah. Um, it's it is something that, I didn't realize again how my experience of life before I even had my major health collapse, my experience of life for 18 years was gray.
Mm,
Everything was gray, right? I had a mild visual snow I didn't know that was there. I had a constant ringing in my ears. I had nothing felt alive. I didn't feel connected to anything. I didn't feel connected to people or to music, and I thought that was normal, right?
mm,
You get oh, I like this song or whatever, but it's different when you feel it like so
mm,
viscerally, like deep in your soul, right? And through my whole process of purification, detoxification, I didn't know that, you know, tasting food could be an experience that felt multidimensional, right? I
totally.
didn't know that just sharing a sunset could evoke such a deep feeling of awe and connection to all of creation,
Mm,
right? I didn't know that wasn't even again seeing colors properly, right? All of a sudden, like my visual field got so sharp and everything would pop and felt so alive. And yeah, that's why it's just like people don't know what they're missing, they really don't. Now, it is a deep process, of course. There's this idea that, yeah, there's a magic pill out there, right? We've been sold that there's a pill for every ill. And the truth is, there's just about doing things at the right time, right?
yeah.
Just trying to find the right tool, the right thing at the right time. That will take you so far. And then you change. And then you go to a different phase, a different tool, and that'll take you so far, right? But when you approach it that way, right, it becomes this beautiful journey of self-discovery, which is challenging. Like doing anything great is always going to be challenging. But especially this is, I think, important to hear for someone who's kind of like going through it right now.
Mhm.
I think it's probably the most difficult towards the beginning when
Oh,
you are
totally.
unraveling the most amount of junk. There's just so much inertia to be that exact same way, so much unprocessed, unaware trauma and behavioral patterns, and God only knows how much toxicity and parasites to come out. But once you have gotten the kind of the ball rolling, you've gotten through those more intense waves, then you get into this beautiful space of momentum. Then you get into this exponential returns, right? It's kind of like, reaching a high degree of proficiency in any skill. It's all of a sudden you get into this cycle of accelerated returns where, you learn skills more quickly, you get more and more creative, right? And it's the same with health. All of a sudden you can tolerate everything better, right? Tools that didn't work before you can implement now, and then they can give you massive boosts, right? And so it's pretty cool, I would say. It's really cool.
Hmm. Yeah, it's such a such a beautiful journey, and at the same time I feel like it never ends. Like there's always new depths to reach, like, and I'm always so transparent about my journey with people as well. Like there were times where I was liver flushing like consistently once, twice a month. And then like after that whole incident with my near-death experience, my body has been in such like a state of hypervigilance where like I know like it's gonna take me a little bit of time to work back up to that state that I was experiencing. But same, like gosh, I remember after a couple of my liver flushes walking outside and being like, I feel like I'm on mushrooms. Like, this is insane. Like, I can literally see the world in like AD. Like, there's all these colors I couldn't see before. Like, I feel like I have like lifetimes worth of energy. I wake up like crying from gratitude. Like, there were all these emotions that I never was able to even access or feel just like by the simplicity of life, right? Like watching a bird or a squirrel, like just like the simplest things. And um, I think, like, as you said, when you start to taste those things, when you get the experience that you never thought was accessible, you will do anything to get back to that state. It's kind of this like, you're kind of just like, all right, I'm on this journey. I know the taste of it. I gotten it a little bit, right? Which is often what I'll see in my clients early on. Like they start the program. And I always say, I'm like, don't hold on to this because it's going to change. But they see this massive reprieve and they're like, oh my gosh, my symptoms are improving. And I was like, yeah. And they're also going to, like the next
Hmm.
layer will also have to come up. But like, because they actually can see the process and that it works, and they kind of get these moments of reprieve. And then, like, they can come up for air and they're like, oh, okay, this feels really good. And now I'm ready to go back down into like the deep process. And I think to, yeah, to just trust that, like, as you said, it gets easier and easier. And at a certain point, what you used to think as like, this is the worst thing ever, you're kind of laughing at. Like right now, like the symptoms I used to have where I'm like, bloated and constipated and like I'm feeling like shit or depressed. And now I'm having a day like that. And I'm like, wow, I must be going through a massive metal elimination. This is great. It's like your perspective of like the physical body going through something just changes because you know that you have the tools, you know that you are on the right path. And yeah, I think it's well said that it just gets easier and easier.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow. I think something I notice a lot with people, there's often this idea of it needs to be a straight shot to the moon, right? It needs to
Mhm.
be like a linear progress, like you just keep improving, improving, improving. I think of it more of a spiral. I think that's a better visual
Mhm.
because what happens is you can be improving and going up, but then you get to essentially get glimpses of where you came from, right? Or, glimpses of a higher state as well, right? You get these layers that come up where you'll dip a bit and then you'll go back up and then you'll get these peaks where you're like, wow, this is crazy. Like how can I even feel this good, right? Why do I feel like motivated to do everything all the time? I didn't even know it was this easy, right? I thought I needed 20 Adderalls a day. Um, and so I think when you put that in that perspective, people are then willing to kind of dive a little deeper and not feel so attached to just, I need to feel good all the time. It's kind of the same thing. And again, New Age spirituality, like,
Oh,
sorry to
totally.
bash it so much, but they're so obsessed with just feeling good all the time. It's like, just feel good and then you manifest your dreams. And actually, like you said so eloquently in another conversation, it's actually often the opposite where the real magic happens. You need to often go deep into your shit in order to actually to unlock this gem of more power within, right?
Mhm. So
Um,
true.
it's like another way to look at it is you're increasing, it's a process of increasing your voltage, right? Or increasing
Mhm.
your Shakti, right? I really like that word. It's a Sanskrit word essentially for like creative feminine energy, right?
Mhm.
Um, and that's the X factor. It's like when you look at, for example, musicians, like there's this thing that they talk about X factor. Like there could be two drummers playing the exact same beat, but one has insane groove and insane feel and gets the entire crowd moving, and the other is just meh. It's just
Mhm.
me, right?
Mhm.
And it's that X factor. It's actually that energy with they bring it, right? And it's kind of like life, all of a sudden you can have so much more voltage through a process like this, and things just happen easily. You meet different kinds of people, you get different kinds of ideas, you have different kinds of drive. There's just like just like business is different, right? All of a sudden you're getting more and more opportunities that were just not available to that current state, right? You simply didn't have the voltage to even handle an experience at that level, right?
Yeah.
So it's very cool. It's actually, I think, the same with meditation too. Meditation
Mhm.
really is not even in my opinion, a passive process. It's an active process of kind of making yourself more alive in many
Mm.
ways, right?
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
true. Yeah, there's also something that I feel really called to bring into the conversation that I'm sure you've witnessed in your clients as well. And it's this essence of like whenever we are basically going through a process, and I've seen it especially in mineral balancing, is that it shakes up the current paradigm so much that it's too confronting for people and they actually end up saying no, right? Like whenever they get presented the opportunity to go on a really deep healing journey and to actually start facing their fears and their traumas. And I've actually seen this with people who would come in and they'd be fully invested and say yes, like quite literally paid the money, signed up, and then suddenly they have this massive intuition that they can't do it. It's not the right time. Like they're, and it's really the shadow being brought up to the surface because, right, like the subconscious knows, oh, we're about to go, like we're about to be turned upside down, and like all of this shit's gonna come up. And there's this phenomena that tends to happen in our lives that I think I heard it on a podcast a couple years ago, and it stuck with me so deeply, where it's this like every single time that we are saying that we want something, God or source will challenge us and continue to say, like, do you really want this? Like, and we'll get this massive amount of pushback, right? Like, and something will happen where suddenly, like, the timing feels off, or like you feel the need to be like, oh, this is actually not the right decision for me, or maybe like maybe somewhere in the future, whatever it is, there's always an excuse that comes up because we have to say yes to life so firmly over and over again because we know our goal. And when there is a hesitation in our voice, when we're saying yes, like all of our subconscious patterns will come up to try to keep us stuck in what currently feels comfortable. And I think with
well,
detoxification, it's like one of the biggest things I see happen in my clients. Like there's always a drop off rate in a program where people are really excited and invested in the beginning. And then there'll be people that literally fall off the face of the earth, just ghosts, like never hear from
flip,
them
yeah,
again. And you're
yeah.
like, oh wow, like they fell off, it's like they like the shadow came up and it was too intense to deal with. And so for anyone listening that has been on the fence of like doing something like this, I like especially people who are into new age spirituality and into plant medicine and like, it's all this like this is literally the deepest path you can ever walk. Like I know a lot of people that have done like hundreds of ayahuasca ceremonies and they are so not embodied because they're actually not willing to face this level of pushback from their subconscious all the time, like right in an actual
Oh
program
yeah.
that's multiple years. And so yeah, it's deep.
Yeah. Yeah, for real. I'm so glad you brought that up. There's a really good book I recommend everyone checks out called The War of Art. So not the art of war, right? Which is
Mm.
that original Sun Tzu one. It's The War of Art, which talks about this. Have you read it?
No.
Yeah, it's literally exactly what you're saying. It's this phenomenon that the guy refers to as resistance, which is anytime you are trying to step into life, you are trying to essentially make your soul come more alive. There is an equal and opposite force that tries to meet you and
Mm.
stop you, and it can manifest literally any single way, right? It most often manifests internally, right,
Yeah.
with excuses and hesitations, but often manifests externally with people and situations. Um, it's absolutely mind-blowing to think about this because the stronger, deeper commitment you have to make deep change, the more intense it's going to be,
Oh,
right? And
totally.
and so it's all about pacing, right?
Mhm.
I try to meet people where they're at. Like some people really, like you said, they're just not ready for that. So, we'll go a little bit. We chip a little bit away, they get some improvement, and then as they feel like they're ready, like we can really kick into gear. And that's up to the person. But this phenomena of resistance is everywhere. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm really into what's called sadhanas, right? So they're called spiritual disciplines,
Mhm.
and it's Jesus did that in the desert for 40 days, 40 nights. He's that ultimate incredible level of willpower to do something like that, right? And he got tested. He got tested in the desert. He was like, "Oh, why don't you just manifest your bread and your water?" And he's like, no, I'm committed to this, right? And it's that resistance showing up. It shows up actually in so many different levels in our life.
Mm,
And yeah, so I would do these sadhanas, and really it's just a meditation practice. Hey, I'm going to meditate every day for 40 days, right? That
mm,
simple. And like clockwork, it was always at the very end, it was like day 38, 39. Something crazy would happen that would try to get me to not meditate for that day,
oh yeah,
right?
same here.
Just some
Yeah.
some random stupid thing that made no sense. And in the moment I would be like caught blindsided by my, oh, like, why do I have to get on a plane all of a sudden and like go back home, or like, what happened to my car? Like, what the hell? And um but then I would like see it for what it was, and I'm still gonna meditate. And
Mm,
it's that kind of thing tends to happen whenever you're trying to make a deep commitment to transformation. Most commonly though, again, it's usually just our own subconscious, our own inner mind and our own inner workings coming up with excuses as to why we shouldn't do that, or like why it's not the right time, or like why it's not ready for it, or whatever. But um, the truth of it is, if you succumb to that force, you're not going to live fully, right? You're going to be half living,
oh yeah.
right? You're going to be drifting, right? You're going to be like just going along with the currents of like what you're already doing, and you're not going to really like actualize and realize like how much more you can live in this life. Um, so yeah, I think people need to be aware that that's even a thing. It's like if you're
Absolutely.
not aware that that force exists, that equal and opposite force, both internally and externally, it'll wreck you without even realizing,
Oh
you know?
gosh. Yeah, so hard and such a beautiful topic. I feel like we can even spend like a whole podcast on just that one alone. It's so massive. And I feel like it's really the cheat code to life is to understand like when there's resistance showing up, that there's again, like on the other side of the resistance is those like they're the openings. They're basically you ascending, if you will, to this next level that you're actually choosing to step into. And every single time now where I'm like, okay, I'm met with this massive resistance. Yesterday was another day of examples of just like a whole series of events that like in the moment I felt this massive amount of empowerment because my whole day was like this like depressed, like why is this happening to me, like losing all this money or whatever it is and feeling like I'm like out of alignment and all these things are falling apart. And in that moment I was like, wait, but this is a gift, right? Like this is a gift to me. And because there's this resistance, there has to be this massive opening. And I was able to in real time turn it around so fast. And I feel like when we learn to master that art, and I'm not perfect at it, right? Like there's still an hour or two where I'm like, oh, fuck this, like this,
Mhm.
why is it
Oh
happening
yeah.
to me? And then we get to actually respond from a place of like, oh, wait, I have full like choice in this and how I respond to it. And I can actually, I don't like to use the word manipulate, but I can change, right? Like my reality, I can shape my reality based on how I respond to these things. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I hope that people can take away from this conversation, like even just taking a moment to look at your life and to see like where do I find these major resistances and how can I actually lean in, knowing that on the other side is what I actually desire to experience. So yeah, I want to also take it um, a little bit of a different direction. I know that we kind of discussed this, but what I think would be extremely valuable for some of my listeners and also just really fun to dive into is just kind of discussing some more alternative healing therapies. I'd be super curious to just kind of like rapid fire some things into the space and just hear your opinion on them, like see if you implement them. Because I know that in the world of detoxification specifically, there's so many tools out there, like do we do this? Do we do that? Like what's the right order? What's the right frequency? Like do we use these tools? Do we not use these tools? I know we're probably also going to have different opinions on some of these topics, but I'd be really curious to just talk about them because I get a lot of questions on these topics from my audience specifically. So first off, I'm super, super curious what your thoughts are on EBU or ozone therapy, especially like, you know,
Mm.
IV or having some sort of like, yeah, EBO therapy.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. So ozone is a wonderful tool. Especially rectal insufflation will change the balance of microbes in the large intestine to be more aerobic, so oxygen using instead of anaerobic, right, which are generally pathogenic. So it's a wonderful tool. The issue is the more sensitive a client, the more likely they're not going to be able to handle the die-off that comes with an oxidative therapy, because that's what it is. It's oxidating, which often breaks things apart, which often causes a release of more biotoxins or endotoxins or metals trapped within the parasites or whatever it's killing off. So I love it. It's a wonderful tool. It's just about doing it at the right time, really, like anything else, I would say. I, in particular, love ozonated oils. They are my favorite antiparasitics by far. So, Rhizol Gamma, Rhizol Mir, or Biopure 10 in 1 are, I would consider them the parasite nukes, right? So, when people are really ready and have a really, really solid foundation, you can absolutely nuke some parasites with them. Yet, it is safe for your microbiome, right? It's very selective. It won't destroy it like oregano oil can or like grapeseed extract can.
Mhm.
The ozonated oils, so it's a mixture of different essential oils, and again, they ozonate them for several hours, and it just makes it such a powerful tool, particularly rectally, adding it to like an enema or topically, actually. So you can, if you have a localized issue, you can often just rub it into the skin, and it will make some change happen, let's just say, right?
Yeah, love that. Yeah. Definitely see like it's such a mix and it's all about timing. Like in my journey when I introduced ozone, it was very early on, had a definitely like massive die off, like terrible reaction to it. So, yeah, same as you. I don't typically recommend it with people that are just starting out and that are very new to this work, but it can be extremely extremely powerful.
A
Um
note on that, if I may, because I know you're
yeah,
about to
totally.
continue on to another question. So I think a good principle also relating again to art of detox is the greater potential something has to make amazing change, also the greater potential it has to mess someone up and cause a nasty reaction. And often the things that people react to sometimes the strongest are sometimes the things they need the most. You just have to titrate it really, really low, but it can be what they're most toxic in. It's mobilizing so much of the very thing that they need to get rid of. Now, not always the case, and that is the skill of the practitioner to be able to identify like
Right.
when you need to pivot or not. But yeah, so equal and opposite again, right? Tools can be very, very powerful. I'll give you an example, right? Cilantro, basic old cilantro, right? Especially a really powerful cilantro tincture. Really, really incredible for natural chelation at the right time, which is usually at the very, very end of a process.
Yeah.
But most of the time, it's going to mess people up. Like the
Oh,
grand majority of the time, it's going to mess
super.
people
Yeah.
up. Yeah, I mean, most of the time when I've heard people try cilantro on their own at any point of the journey, it usually causes a gnarly reaction.
Mhm.
Why? Because it needs to go at the very, very end. It is one of the only natural substances that's going to actually mobilize toxins from the intracellular space and essentially undo a lot of the intracellular damage that things like mercury and aluminum and cadmium are doing,
Mhm.
right? But there's no point in doing that if the extracellular space is super toxic, right? Most of the toxins are in the extracellular space. All the parasites are in the extracellular space. So, like, you cannot then pull things out from deep within the cells just
Mhm.
to like create a traffic jam essentially and create
Yeah.
massive amounts of oxidative stress. But when you do it at the right time, incredible. It was incredible for me, incredible for many of my clients too. But it's like very, very end kind of
Mhm.
tool, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I definitely think that, yeah, I mean, also, I tend to get a lot of people that are so early on that need like months and months of preparation work to even go into like any sort of like chelation or like other more advanced modalities where it's like, you can, I think a lot of people think they need a lot of these things early on in their journey because they feel so shitty and have felt so shitty that they're like, oh, it must be the heavy metals, it must be this, but they don't understand, right? The whole domino effect that these metals cause in our system over time and that we have to clear up the domino effect backwards. It's like, okay, at the end of this manifestation, you now have like all these gut issues and there's like leaky gut, there's constipation, there's dysbiosis. So we have to work with that first and then work our way back all the way to like the origin story here, which could be the
Yeah.
heavy metal in that case. And yeah, I think myself included, a lot of people tend to just be like, which is my biggest pet peeve. I feel like I don't get upset. a lot, but when I see like the the like zeolite sprays on the internet and like
Oh my
everyone
God,
talking about like deworm
bro.
yourself, I literally can like I'm like I just want to make an account just like being like shaking these people up and also just trusting that they're playing their role in consciousness. And in a weird way, I'm like I've gotten a lot of people that gotten sick from that. So I'm like, I wish it wasn't this case, but yeah, it's just like a thing of marketing, so
Yeah.
yeah, great pointer that you had there. On that note, what are your thoughts on zeolites?
Okay, I love this topic actually. So there are so many shitty zeolites that are actually
Oh
very
yeah.
toxic. So like AZZ, was it ACZ nano zeolites, very common one.
Hmm.
That is a surefire way to introduce aluminum toxicity over time, right?
Hmm.
It is a natural volcanic clay that has lots of research for its binding capacities and its impact on health in general, which can be wonderful. The issue is there are lab-made zeolites, right, that don't have the proper structure. Zeolite itself is actually aluminum silicate, right? It's a cage-like structure of aluminum and silica that traps toxins, right? And so if you lab make it, it often does not have the proper structure or enough of a proper bond for it to stay as it should. It often breaks apart, and then you have an introduction of aluminum. There's also the quality of, well, what is the ratio of silica to aluminum in the zeolite, right? Is the zeolite that you're using not enough silica and then has the capacity to have excess aluminum break off? That's very, very common. And in today's world where everyone's getting sprayed with aluminum all the time due to geoengineering, right? And
Yep.
just to say it outright, I see it in every single hair test ever. I'm sure now you're doing hair testing too. You probably see it all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
We don't need more aluminum, right? That is like the last thing we need more of. But if you pick a good zeolite with a high silica to aluminum ratio, it can actually be an aluminum binder, right?
Hmm.
It can actually have an affinity for more aluminum, right?
Hmm.
The basic reason is, in nature, aluminum is always found with silica, right? It's never found in an isolated nanoform like what's being sprayed in the skies to save us from global warming or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is always found in combination. And so the antidote is often silica, right? So all that being said, I have big beef with the nanozeolites because they often create more aluminum toxicity. They are also intracellular chelators sometimes, which is in the same realm of
Yeah.
cilantro, can be absolutely devastating for some people. I mean,
Hmm.
I've had several cases of people who come to me that literally their health issues really started when they had a nanozeolite. Like
Oh,
they
same.
had it,
Yeah.
yeah, and it destroyed them, right? They
And
were
to think
never the
that they're
same.
giving it to kids too, where I'm like, this is absolutely
Crazy.
insane. Yeah.
Crazy. Yeah. So that being said, there are good zeolites out there, right? They're just harder to come by. The micronized zeolites can be hit or miss. There's a lot of really bad ones, again, due to different issues like that. And generally, when you micronize them, now you are getting them into the bloodstream. And again, you can have that wave of mobilization from storage places that cannot be tolerable by many people. So what I generally like is I like gut focused zeolites, of which I only know three brands, right? That's KI Science, that's Zeobind, and that's Lava Vitae, right?
Mhm.
Those are all milled in a way that makes it stay in the gut. It makes it a phenomenal gut detoxifier, gut healer. And so you have an osmotic gradient of toxins that are deeper in the body will then come to the gut because the gut is cleaner, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
The other one that's really good, everyone's using these days is Zeocharge,
Oh
right?
yeah, one
I
of my
know
favorites.
yeah, Zeocharge is rad. It is a micronized zeolite, but it is of really high quality. It's not something I would start people with right away, unless they are like generally a little bit more robust.
Mhm.
But it is a really good product still. And because zeolites, I mean, you get a good zeolite, it binds to so many things. I mean, ammonia,
Absolutely.
histamine, pesticides, heavy metals. It's the only binder known to bind to fluoride as well. So if you're
Mhm.
doing anything that mobilizes fluoride, you better have a zeolite in your detox program, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's good
Yeah.
sometimes.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, great nuance, and I completely agree. Yeah, Zeo Charge, as my listeners I'm sure know, is definitely one of my favorite ones. But yeah, definitely not suitable for people that are like ultra sensitive. So I know that you put me on the KIZ light. I'm very excited to bring it to some of my clients' protocols and myself as well. So thank you for that recommendation. All right, so last. piece here. Ah, I forgot. I'm like, what was I gonna say again? There was one on the tip of my tongue that I wanted to bring in. Um, all right, we'll choose a different one.
It'll come back around. Yeah,
It will.
I just had to ramble about Zeolite, distract
No,
you.
I get it. Trust me. I still get super, super upset about it. Um, all right. So what are your thoughts on, oh, I really want to get to this one answer. Actually, let's start with vitamin C supplementation.
Okay. Yeah, vitamin C is something I use when people are acutely sick, right? I don't believe you should do IV vitamin C. There's a big issue uh, with the vials that they're stored in that introduces, you'll never guess it actually, aluminum toxicity, right?
Wow.
Crazy. Yeah. No. So there's an issue with the vials they're stored in. And when you put it in an IV, you're getting in a direct injection of low amounts of aluminum, but there's no barrier. So it's
Mhm.
kind of straight in there. So I generally don't even think you need that. I mean, first off, vitamin C is highly absorbable just as it is, right? But if you want to go above and beyond, a liposomal is great. Use cases. It's good for connective tissue repair in certain cases. So, people recovering from injuries, I'll put them on things like glycine and MSM and collagen and colostrum and vitamin C, and that will help like regeneration of like, torn ligaments or whatever.
Yeah.
But I also like vitamin C for when people are sick, right? Like everyone else uses it, but I like a liposomal C for that. In mineral balancing, it's used in different situations depending on the oxidation rate and the sodium to potassium ratio. It's in a lot of the valence formulas,
Mhm.
in just smaller amounts here and there. So it's very useful. It helps to reduce copper, I'm pretty sure. So it helps kind of take a copper oxide, reduce it, give electrons, which then allow it to be used again, essentially. But yeah, that's kind of the general use cases I have for it.
Amazing. Yeah, I know the times that I was just on like a high dose vitamin C every day, not knowing like the effect on other systems and things
Mhm.
it had in my body. And yeah, when I started learning that, I was like, wow, there's so much wrong with how we see and use supplements. But yeah, now of course, again, like using it when I feel sick or using it when it's introduced in my mineral balancing protocols. So, so
For sure.
helpful.
I think yeah, again, it's like the magic pill thing. I got into the whole orthomolecular medicine, like high dose vitamin C cures everything. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, wait, it's not working. Wow.
Yeah, same.
What a surprise. Uh,
Yeah, same with like the whole like gosh, I was in the whole like copper thing where I was like I need to just start taking high dose copper and then like severe like I
oof,
got so much worse. Like
that's
I
a
started getting
brutal one.
I
Yeah.
know. Like why do we get into these things or like the high dose iodine? I'm like
Yeah.
I've gone through every single mineral rabbit hole
Yeah.
where I was like, "Oh, I just need to take 15 milligrams of iodine every single day and just like nuke my
Yeah.
system."
Yeah, same thing. Again, that's so funny. Some of us just love to learn the painful way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it actually speaks to something deeper. There is a lot of like cult-like thinking in holistic healing
Mhm.
that people get obsessed with one thing, right? Everyone needs vitamin C. Everyone needs B1, although I do like B1, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Everyone needs copper, right? Or everyone has parasites, everyone has Lyme, everyone has mold, right? Everyone has generational trauma. And, there's truth to this, right? But the thing
Mhm.
is, it's never just one thing that is going to resolve a case. It is a mosaic of things, right? It is like
So
different
true.
layers within a person's case that you just have to address it at the right time.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, there's often, a handful of like deep seeds that are like their core issues. But
Mhm.
along the way, like you can probably find the mold in most people or the candida in most people. You can find Lyme in most people, actually. There's a
Mhm.
form of testing that Klinghardt does where he just ultrasounds the hiding places of spirochetes, like the joints and the brain and the adrenal glands and such, and then collects the urine and tests it. And he finds spirochetes in pretty much everyone, right?
Right.
There's Lyme spirochetes actually in like cavemen that were frozen thousands of years ago,
Wow.
right? And so, really more of what is also in play that can be driving the illness, right? What deficiencies and mental emotional scars and other things are at play, right? So it's always a mosaic, I feel, instead of just like one thing, like vitamin C or
Oh
copper.
yeah. So
Yeah.
true. Yeah, I mean it's like such a big topic, root cause healing these days. And I think that many people don't understand what root cause healing is because they can only look at it through like, we have to isolate it into like one single thing where it's like
Mhm.
the Lyme is the root cause of everything, or it's the, it's the SIBO that's the root cause of everything, or it's this. And
Mhm.
I'm like, it's again like it's this interesting interplay of all these big pieces together. And I think, as you said, there's these key players that we get to identify because, yeah, for some people, right, when we look at like the toxic bucket analogy, it's like some people, you know, they are born with their bucket almost already overflowing because of the trauma, the deficiencies, the toxicity, and then they get a root canal and that tips it over, right? So like now
Yeah.
we can say like yes, the root canal was one of the main contributors and one of the root causes, but another person with a root canal can live with that for 20, 30 years and have zero issues. And so it's like
Mhm.
understanding why specific things manifests in our bodies the way it does because all of these different parts and pieces play a role. And that's why I think, if you work with a practitioner that can actually understand that, not saying that, either of us are like the perfect experts in that. I don't like to pedestalize anyone these days because then we have to inevitably fall off the pedestal sometimes. So
Yeah, we get
it's,
humbled over and
yeah.
over.
Oh,
Yeah.
totally, totally.
Yeah.
And, it's like, that's the thing too. It's like, we're, clearly and I'm actually curious. I know I looked at your human design at some point, but like I'm curious if you're a three line being as well, which I think most of us are, that tend to like need to go to through like trial and error and learn from that. And
Oh,
so
interesting.
yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
it's like a pattern, that like a way of learning, if you will. Like it's a path of learning. And I think like we get humbled so many times because we think we know it all and then we actually realize that we don't. And I think that's like the most beautiful, and I personally think like the most advanced way of actually being able to look at your things, because I know so many doctors that go study one thing and 20 years later they still preach the same thing. They have very rigid beliefs. They're not willing to actually look and admit they were wrong. And I think like working with someone who's constantly like trying and seeing, how are my patients responding to this, how am I responding to this, like what's the latest research, and to have someone who's actually in the world, um I personally think is extremely important.
Yeah. 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 Well said again.
Hmm. Well, this is such an amazing conversation. I'm so excited that we did this, and I'm sure there's going to be many more because I feel like there's so many topics for us to explore. But thank you so much for being on the show today, and I will put all of your details in the listen notes. Anything that you specifically want to say about, your website, your social media, yeah, anything that my followers need to know.
Yeah, so you can find me at jyotimb.com. I have lots of articles where I kind of go in depth there and lots of other podcast episodes where, like this one, just had awesome conversations with different people. Yeah, and then I'm somewhat active on Instagram at Kyle Peche. You'll have the link there. So I'm going to be posting a lot more in the next few months. I have we all go through processes, and right now it's why I've appreciated your help so much. And I'm going through a definite restructuring in my practice to be able to serve at a greater scale and put out a lot more free information. So be on the lookout.
Epic. Amazing. Thank you so much again, and hope to have you back soon.
Right on. Thanks again.